in this third aspect or third characteristic of the religious structure of capitalism, according to Benjamin. So what I would like to do, since this is really difficult and crucial, more difficult than the first two aspects, I would like to read with you quite closely this passage. Keeping in mind also, as I said this morning, that the German word Schuld, which is the word for guilt, it is translated here as guilt, is also the word for debt. So much so that Samuel Weber, in the book that I showed you, suggests, as I already mentioned, that we should translate Schuld as, he says, debt as guilt with hyphens. Debt as guilt in one word. But for the sake of our inquiry in this seminar, I will make a drastic choice and decision, and I will assume the consequences. I think it's really worth it as a bet, you know. I will translate Schuld against the translation that we are using, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but I will systematically substitute the word guilt with the word debt when we read now. And we'll see what happens. So it's perfectly legitimate. Schuld also means debt. There is no question about that. In some sentences, it might sound a little awkward and surprising when moral issues are more obviously at stake. But you will see that it's a very thought-provoking and productive substitution, I guess. We will be rewarded to use our economic paradigm. So what I will simply do is read and substitute debt for guilt, okay? And let's see what happens. So I will start at the bottom of the first page, 6 lines before the end of the page, when you read "and third," right? So the third aspect. And third, this cult indebts or creates debt. In German, he says verschuldend. It creates debt. Capitalism is probably the first instance of a cult that, instead of redeeming, that is to say, allowing for reparations, expiation, etc., indebts or creates debt. I jump over a few words or sentences, and I continue where you see a vast, where is that? A vast or monstrous sense of debt, you see? It's on the next page, I guess. Where is it? No. Ah, yes, 3 lines before the end of page of our first page. So I continue. A vast or monstrous, ungeheures in German. It's like a monster. A vast sense of debt or consciousness of debt, Schuldbewusstsein, a vast sense of debt that is unable to find relief. Literally, he says that doesn't know how to redeem itself, seizes on the cult, not to redeem this debt, but to make it universal, to hammer it into the conscious mind, and finally, and above all, to include God himself in this debt, in order to finally interest God in redeeming this debt. This redeeming cannot then be expected from the cult itself or from the reformation of this religion, which would need to be able to hold on to something stable in it, or even from the complete abjuration of this religion, right? You remember that the first and second aspect of the religious structure of capitalism were precisely the absence of a dogma and the permanent duration of the cult. So without dogma, without something external to the cult, there is no basis on which you could consider reforming the cult or abjure it, right? It being the cult of the cult that it is, there is no reformation of it and no abjuration of it. It's just what it is. And then Benjamin continues, and I continue substituting